I remember as a kid laying on the golden linoleum of my mother's kitchen floor as she cooked. Back then, my family would grow a lot of our own food. We even raised our own animals. So we were there for every step of the process. I could trace back each ingredient to its origin. We held the basic beginnings of each meal in our hands. That curiosity, that desire to explore how our food is constructed, the chemistry behind it, the need to understand where we came from, that was the drive inside me. I mean, my grandmother and my mother could barely get along, but there they were, standing side by side, working together to create something for their family. It's not passion that kept them going, it was need. Passion is a wonderful byproduct of curiosity. Curiosity is the reason I come back to the kitchen. It's why I teach. How can we communicate through plates that we share? How does this shared experience of eating together start conversations between us? Curiosity is the most unexplainable of desires. This dish is a celebration of a humble ingredient. It's rooted in tradition and simplicity, and tonight I'm going to share that experience with you.
Hello, and welcome to our 2021 Opportunities for Education Cooking Show. I'm Travis Grimwood, the chairman of the Kalamazoo Valley Community College Foundation. Thank you for joining us. For more than 20 years, the foundation has raised funds for student scholarships. Today, we're embracing an entirely new approach to the foundation's scholarship fundraising efforts through the presentation of this virtual cooking show. We're taking advantage of this beautiful facility at Kalamazoo Valley's Bronson Healthy Living campus and the great talent right here at the college by featuring Culinary Outreach Program co-director and recent spring baking champion, Corey Barrett. He'll be joined by college president Marshall Washington. Together, they will create delicious tart right before our eyes. Thank you for coming together as a virtual community to support our students. Advocating for and financially supporting our students are what the foundation and this event is all about. Throughout this cooking show, you will have the opportunity to make a gift to the KVCC Foundation. We hope that you will partner with us and give generously. Thank you.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining Dr. Washington and I here at the Kalamazoo Valley Community College Bake Shop.
Well, we are very excited to be offering this virtual cooking show to highlight our students and to be able to profile the foundation. So let's get started.
All right, so the first thing that we're going to dive into for the chocolate and sweet potato tart is the crust. Obviously, we got to get that one out of the way so we have something to put it into. In the bake shop, sometimes we call it stuff in a cup. So anything that you put into like a shell or in a cup, that's what we're going to do first. So we're going to go ahead and make our crust first. And it's got a few ingredients. It's a little bit different than a pie shell would be, where it doesn't have just the lard and the flour and a little sugar in it. And this one actually has some eggs in there too. And so it gives the crust like a little bit of structure to it.
Can you tell us what ingredients are going to go into your tart?
Absolutely. So we're going to start off with, we have a little bit of a powdered sugar in this case. Most of the tarts will end up having granulated sugar. This will give it a little finer texture, and then butter because, you know, it's delicious. So we'll get all this in here first.
And do you have to keep the butter at room temperature, or is it in the refrigerator?
So we'll do best practices.
Okay.
Best practices is room temperature, but if it comes out of the fridge, Lord knows that I've broken the best practices plenty of times during cooking, and you can totally do that. It just needs to be mixed up a little bit longer.
Okay. And I see you also have some eggs there. What about the eggs and temperature?
So the eggs, if you have them room temperature, awesome. If you're like most folks and you know they're going to be coming out of the cooler or out of the refrigerator rather, you're going to want to have them, if you have them cold, that's fine. But again, it's going to take a little bit longer because what's going to happen is with those cold eggs, they're going to tend to set up the butter, and it's not going to mix in quite as well. So we'll have that. So what we're going to do first is we're going to cream our butter and our sugar. Creaming is just a fancy word for mixing, plain and simple, right? So we're looking to kind of coat all that sugar with the butter that's in there, and this will help kind of break down any of the glutens that would otherwise happen. And gluten's, you know, maybe gets a little bit mystified. When we think of breads, it's what adds the structure. When we think of pie crust, it's what sometimes can make it too tough. Right. And so in this case, we have a couple of different different things that are going to help break that up. Obviously, we have the butter that's in here, so that acts as a tenderizer. We have the egg yolks that are going to act as a tenderizer. And we also have almond flour. And the almond flour we have here has the skin on. You can use the skin on, skin off. Flavor-wise, doesn't make that much of a difference, really. Aesthetically, I like the brown specks.
So did you grind up your own almond flour on your own? Is that what you do?
Oh, yeah. No. No, we bought that already ground up. And it's kind of cool because if you wanted to sub in like other nut flours, walnuts or something like that, you probably could get away with that just fine. I really like walnut a lot. That's just a personal preference, but I think it would add a lot to this tart too.
Now, you were sharing earlier about your grandmother and your mother. So would your grandmother and mother had used almond flour?
No, they probably made fun of me for using it too. So, it's a little expensive. If it wasn't kind of the bare basics for them, they were going to be using that. So, my grandmother made a lot of pies. She actually, after, as she got older, that was one of her side gigs. She would make pies at home, and she would sell them at the campgrounds that she used to summer at, and make a whole bunch of kind of fun stuff. So, she made a lot of pies. So, actually, for my wedding, for my wife, not mine, my wife. For my wife's wedding, she made a whole bunch of pies. She made like 10 extra pies, and we actually gave those away for gifts for the folks that helped out.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, I was.
Do you remember the flavors of the pies?
I remember one specifically because it's my favorite pie, and it's very old school, and I'm going to venture to say most people don't like it. It's elderberry pie, and so that's it's one of those funky little berries you got to go out and collect a whole bunch of. They're real tiny. Has a very
it seems like elderberry though has made a comeback over in the last couple of years.
Yeah, maybe it's cool now. She would be one of the cool people now. Definitely wasn't that cool back then, but she made that one. Apple pie. She did pumpkin. She didn't always do sweet potato. She doesn't need to know, but I think sweet potato is better than pumpkin pie. I think it's like not just a little bit better, it's a lot better. So.
It's a lot better. I'm also one of those folks that love sweet potato. Now, one of my children, they love pumpkin, but that's only at his birthday.
Absolutely. When you do sweet potato pie, I have opinions on this, so I want to know what yours is. And I'm mixing up the butter and the eggs right now. And if you go through this process, it kind of looks like cottage cheese right now. And when the students ask about that too, we talk about that too. Students will look in here and they kind of get real nervous, like this doesn't look right. It doesn't look right, and it shouldn't look right at this point, but it's going to mix in. Anybody who's made chocolate chip cookies or something along those lines, after you add the eggs, you'll know that they separate a little bit, so that's what we have here. So back to the question, when you make sweet potato pie, do you prefer spices in it? And if so, what are they? I just thought I was like,
when I make sweet potato pie, I do like a few spices.
Okay.
Warm spices. Probably dominant in my sweet potato pie is cinnamon.
Okay.
And then I use a whole clove of the nutmeg. And I don't use nutmeg out of the can.
Yeah.
I shave it.
Hey, that's awesome.
And the reason why I like to shave it, my wife taught me that trick, in that I don't think it's as pungent as what comes out the can.
I agree, yeah, absolutely. It's more mellow, right? It takes on, has a round flavor instead of that really sharp kind of flavor. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And that will be all the spices other than the flavorings that we would use. And we use a little bit of vanilla.
Yep.
And then we use a little bit of lemon juice.
Oh, wonderful.
And little punchy, but just a little tad, but it's not very much. To me, it brings just a little bit of a small note to the pie to round out all the sweetness that's in there.
Absolutely. That's really very well noted. Maybe you can come in and teach a couple cooking classes.
No,
I'll take a couple days off.
You've done this. You're an expert. I'm not that expert. I just like to fool around.
Those are really
kitchen.
good. I like sweet potato without spices. I like it with vanilla, and that's what we're going to do today. One, I love sweet potato. Like when you get into it, the sweet potatoes are really well roasted, and the skins kind of just fall off.
Right.
They're so good. I just crack it open and sprinkle of salt. And so that's actually, we're not going to add any sugar to the sweet potato filling either. It's kind of a little bit of a different approach. So, all right. So we have the pie dough, or the tart dough here rather. I'm going to spin this guy real so I can pop this off. Here we go. And you can see.
So there's butter in here.
Yep.
There is a little bit of eggs.
Yep. We had
2
a
eggs.
couple eggs in there.
And then there's flour. And
Yep, there
there's
was
almond flour.
Almond flour, and then we had the powdered sugar in the
powdered
beginning
sugar.
too. Yep, and there's actually salt in this as well. That was mixed in with the powdered sugar. So you can see, I mean, the dough has just a really nice texture. This cool part about this dough is eventually you can roll it. And I worked in a production bakery for a long time, and so anytime you touch a dough, a cookie dough or a tart dough otherwise, it should feel sticky without sticking to your hands, if that makes sense. This works really beautiful for like a short dough as well. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this and we're gonna pop it onto parchment paper, and then we will roll this out flat, and then we're sticking it in the cooler for about 30 minutes. In the bake shop, we'll leave it overnight, no problem. And then the next day we can take it out and we can roll it when it's cooled down. This does a few things. Obviously right now with this pliability, if you went to roll it, you would just have nothing but a mess at this stage, right? So really, really sticky. But as it cools, it will also relax the glutens and give you a more tender pie.
And so this recipe, how many pie shells are you gonna get out of this?
You can probably get 2 out of this one here. I know we're gonna roll out 1, but you can usually get 2. When we make it in the bake shop, this is funny for me to look at. When we make it in the bake shop, it's like in a bowl like this big, and it's like, yeah, we can get 40 pie shells or tart shells out of that one. So we're gonna go ahead and stick this in the cooler, and roll that out, and then we'll go ahead and grab all the rest of it, and we'll get rolling on our next step. So the dough that we've made here for this tart is a sablé dough, and sablé it's a wonderful vehicle. Really, its role in this is to transport the flavors that the chef has intended. In our case, it's sweet potatoes. It's going to yield a really beautiful sandy texture. The dough comes together cohesively. It's really, it's just kind of one unit. And while the crust is there, it really plays, that supporting character role where it kind of brings everything together.
So Corey, you've pulled this out of the refrigerator, and how long have you been in the refrigerator?
So this one's been chilling for a good half hour, and like I said, when we do it in class, we'll have the students chill this overnight. So we'll make all our doughs one day, and then we can chill them overnight. We're going to use a rolling pin to persuade the cold dough to do what we want it to. I actually still have my grandmother's rolling pin at home. It's like half of this size, really well worn. My kids make Christmas cookies with it still, so it's pretty awesome. So we have the dough here. Like I said, it's pretty firm now. Don't put any flour on at this stage, because if you do, you have a huge mess all over the place.
And you didn't put anything under it either.
No, there's nothing under it at this point. It's really cold, so it's going to release, especially from this wood top, it's going to release really nicely. Now, eventually, when we do roll it out, we will add some flour to it, but in this case, we're not going to do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to try to get it pliable. This is a good time to take out aggressions or any of those bills that you still have to pay, all those kind of stuff. So we're just going to take the rolling pin and give it what for. So if you want to go ahead and give it a few times across. It's looking pretty good, though. All right, and then we can just flip the dough on over, and we'll get it from the other side, too. This is looking pretty good, and it's always nice to see what the other side looks like, too. That way, if there's any cracks on this side, we can...
It's not sticking to the board very much.
Not too bad, no. We've got a good amount of butter in there, which helps with that. And then what we can do is we can start to roll this out. And every time you go through, when you roll it, you can just give the dough a bit of a quarter turn. If you feel it sticking a little bit, we can use a little bit of the flour that's on there, too. I like to keep it inverted, or I like to flip it every so often, just to make sure it hasn't dried up on the bottom, and it won't stick to your the countertop. It's looking good, though. So again,
Corey, share a little bit about kind of where you grew up and...
Yeah, so I grew up in Northwest Ohio in a very small farming community called Oak Harbor. It's not on most maps. I think, the town was enormous geographically wise, but we had 1,500 people that lived there at the time. It's probably a little bit more than that now, but it's near Cedar Point. So that's always my point of reference, because, a lot of Michigan folks like
And
Cedar Point.
I grew up in Columbus, so we were just, maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours almost from each other.
Down the road there.
And here we meet again in life.
That's it, right? Ohio back in Michigan, I know, you gotta be careful.
Right. So growing up, you shared around your grandmother and your mother baking, and kind of working in the kitchen, and sometimes not always on the best of terms.
Definitely no. They didn't always get along. I think that was for me, and I didn't realize it until later in life. And we're talking maybe just a couple of years ago that, as I went through As I went through culinary school, you hear a lot about passion and do this for your passion, and that can be a very good point to realize to want to do culinary school. For me, looking back at it all, it wasn't always about passion. It was like a point of pride. So if I remember my mother and my grandmother, who didn't really like each other, working next to each other in a kitchen, it was amazing because they still understood they had a responsibility. You know, we had families, and at the time when I was growing up, we had chickens, we had pigs, we had turkeys, which the neighbor's dog ate all of. We had a huge garden, but there was the processing time for all of this. And so watching them actually work together, food became more than just, for me, it was never a point of passion. It was pride that went into it. It was, we made these things with our hands. They help our family survive. And I think when I come into the kitchen, yes, there's parts of passion, especially when you get into the fine, details and the twirly things and, the garnishes, which is fun. But there's also a point where, and I think students can realize this too. It's like they came in not knowing, and then they leave knowing how to do something. That's pride. That's hard work. That's confidence. That's a huge building piece for your career. So
translating your story to students every day in the classroom and sharing your own background, it helps kind of let them know that they can bring their whole self to what they're doing and be able to create passion for that.
Yeah, they could, absolutely. And I think, it creates confidence within them too. It creates a drive within them. And I think as teachers, that's, one of the parts we don't talk about a lot is actually revealing some of yourself and maybe your background that you can relate to a student as well. It can be really, really valuable. I know when I went through college, I started off really great, and then, pretty typical college kid, ended up dropping out about a year later. I had a lot of mental health issues. And then finally, it was a 3-year span before I went back and finished culinary school. And I was shy to tell students that for a long, long time. And then the first time I did, I realized I related with about half of the room, immediately. And that's the humanity of education at large, is trying to make that
many of our
relationship.
students, right now are, during this pandemic time, are actually challenged with a number of things dealing with having to take on additional responsibilities at home and being able to manage sometimes 1 or 2 jobs, and then being able to care for and bring food into the house and all those particular items. So when you think about your own experience and being able to relate that to students, how does today compare to what you were dealing with?
It's even more challenging, I think. Obviously during the pandemic, there's so much more adversity that you're coming up against, right? Not only do you have all the things that are already a challenge in your life, now you have this global challenge in and of itself. And I think that's that huge adversity. And I've talked to a few students who, I don't want to do classes right now, I want to wait until the pandemic is over. My view on all of this is, if you can make any progress during the pandemic, we're not supposed to make progress during this, right? If you can make any, it's like free, it's like house money, just you're going through it, So if you can get that scholarship, if you can come to school, if you can do a class, none of those things are supposed to happen for you. You're making that happen. You're the drive. You're the reason that's happening.
So encouraging students to, no matter what they're trying to deal with, is trying to push through that.
Absolutely.
And using kind of the classroom and what you're learning and what you're doing every day to say, I'm going to put my passion into that, despite all the other things I got to do, and push through it.
Yep, keep on going. So maybe just a few more vertical rolls, and we'll go ahead and line our pan. Yeah, you got it pretty nice. Lovely. Oh, looks great. So what we can do to move this then into the pan is just take the dough and kind of give it a half fold back on itself. You don't have to crease it, but at this point, you can then slide the tart pan underneath of it and set the dough just right directly on the top of it, and then we'll start to kind of feed it into the edges.
Okay, and so what should my hands be doing when I do that?
When you go through the sides, you want flat hands, right? Flat hands save the dough for sure. If we have I'm not going to do it, but if we have our fingers up like this, all our fingers become pressure points, and the weight of the entire dough then is on our fingertips. So we want to avoid that. So just a nice flat hands. Fold. Lovely. And drop that on top of there. Great.
And just fold it on out?
Yep. Put this right back here. And so now we can see a lot of the fractures or the tears are on the edges. And so what we can do is we can start feeding this in on the edges. So we can bring this in and just kind of press it gently down. And we're always kind of picking it up and pressing it down, just like that. Okay. So if you want to go ahead and do that.
Pick it up.
Yep.
And press down.
That's exactly it right there.
Press down.
You can come in during Tart Week and you can help us out with that.
Pick and press. Pick and press. This is really nice.
Yeah, it's a great dough. This is one that we use in class too. This is a recipe that we use right in the classroom. That looks great. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the rolling pin and just go right across the top of the tart pan itself.
So just roll right straight across.
Exactly, and that's going to cut the edges straight off of it. Ta-da, just like that, lovely. Okay. And then all this dough can just be saved for another rolling. And so we'll notice that there's some little blemishes on the tart shell here, right? So we had some extra. This was where we healed our little wound that we had earlier. And so what we'll do is we'll work our thumbs in and around the tart shell. And that's going to pull up the tart dough a little bit. We can press in the center just to kind of move the dough out. And again, we can go one more time over the top. That will remove that little piece there. You can also drag a knife, like the back edge of a knife, across it, and it will work really well. Now, at this stage, what we're going to do is we're going to put some little perforations in the tart dough, and this will help it from kind of bubbling up in the oven. And so we'll just use a fork, and you can go back and pierce it a few times. You don't need to worry about the edges. And then there's a trick here. A lot of times when folks will blind bake their crust, and to blind bake means to put it in the oven with no filling in it, right? A lot of times folks will put a piece of parchment in here and maybe put some beans or rice or pie weights to keep it flattened. With this dough, if you pop it in the freezer for about 40 minutes, you can just go right into the oven straight away with it.
So 40 minutes into the freezer, and then what's our oven set at?
So when we do that, when we eventually bake it, the oven will be at 350 degrees, and we'll bake it for about 15 minutes. Now, our ovens here are convection ovens, so that means they have the fan in. If you have a still oven or just, the kind of home oven, I would go at 375. I think it helps set it a little faster. One thing you never want to do with tart doughs or pie doughs is bake them at too low of a temperature, especially like if you go below 350, the butter will melt and the crust won't set up fast enough, and it will slump. It'll slide down.
So in a regular oven, 375.
375.
How long?
15 minutes, and then, again, be honest. Open up the oven. If it looks too blonde, you put it back in. If it looks, if it's the darkness that you like, take it out. So you gotta use that
So when my
gauge
mother would be cooking like a blind pie shell, she would look into the oven and see what's going on based upon, she'll put probably the time down about 5 minutes.
Yep.
And then she would go in, she'd look at it, and if it wasn't fully baked, she'll take it out, and then she would rotate.
Absolutely,
Do you recommend that?
At home, yes, rotating. Thank you for bringing that up. Sometimes I forget. If you have a convection oven that's blowing the air, you don't need to do that too much. But yes, two things that you mentioned. One, setting your timer a little bit ahead. We call that an insurance policy in the kitchen. Always 5 minutes ahead, or a few minutes ahead.
So you shouldn't be doing too much else.
No, and use a timer. Please use a timer. Don't take a shower. Don't go vacuum so you can't hear your timer or any of that. Make sure that use your timer. That's a good thing. And then also, like you said, making sure that if you need to rotate it in your oven, you could do that too. So.
Oh, good. So we're going to put this in the freezer.
It's going to go in the freezer, half hour, and then it's going to go into the oven eventually.
All right.
Good deal. The crust that we're making is the sablé, so it has a beautiful sandy texture, which really lends itself well to transferring flavors, and that's kind of the role that the tart shell plays, and it just yields to other flavors beautifully. Taste in and of itself shouldn't be the main character here. It should be a supporting character for the rest of the flavors of the tart.
So now we're going to do what with these sweet potatoes?
So with the sweet potatoes, we're gonna go ahead and roast them all off. So if you want to grab 4 or 5 of them, we can just set them right here on the aluminum foil lined pan. And I do recommend using some aluminum foil or parchment to line your pan with. The reason is because it's awful to clean up otherwise. It sticks to the pans like crazy. And the prep on these is really, really easy. We're just gonna take a little bit of oil, and I'm actually just gonna hit it right on the bottom of the pan. And then all we're gonna do.
And what kind of oil is this?
This is just vegetable oil, so nothing over the top. We use canola a lot at home. That's what we end up buying. But we can just coat these potatoes. Now, I do think this part is kind of important. The reason that I think it's important is because we want these potatoes to have a really great transfer of heat, and that's going to really help caramelize the sweet potato in and of itself. And that's going to give us something that's a lot more rich in flavor.
And you previously washed these potatoes?
Yep, they've already been washed off, so they're ready to go. And we're gonna put these in an oven. Now the oven, again, if you have the home oven, you're probably looking at about 400 to 415 degrees. Even with convection, you can do that as well. The time varies, that's the thing. So in the still home oven, you know, you're looking probably at 1 hour and 15 minutes, whereas if you have a convection oven, you're looking at an hour, so 50 minutes to an hour. I do like to basically over-bake these potatoes. So we'll see when they come out of the oven. They kind of have the whole caramel sweet potato sugars coming out and sticking on the bottom. That's when they're the best.
Kind of bust open.
They basically are, yeah. They're literally trying to jump out of their jackets
and you
here.
don't boil these. You just put them on the pan, a little olive oil, and then you put them in an oven.
Right. So what we're trying to do is actually remove water in this case. So try to get the water out of there. And you'll see when we get the potatoes out of the oven, there's actually a hollow space in between the skin and the potato itself, and that's where some of that water left, and you have a stronger sweet potato
And
flavor.
they're easy to peel once they come out the oven.
They really are, yeah. You can. They're super easy to peel. The peels are just going to come right off, and the cool part about this whole process is really when we get to the filling, there's not much more than sweet potato in it. Sweet potato, salt, and a little bit of vanilla, and that's the end of the day.
So our sweet potatoes have been in the oven for about an hour, at 450 degrees. Is that correct?
About 415, yep. And that's what we have. And if this is the original potato, and you can see they've just given up everything, right? So they're super caramelized, really, really delicious now. And you can actually see like some of the sugars have released from the potatoes themselves. And to me, this is one of my favorite things to eat. I have a hard time not actually just peeling this open, putting a little bit of salt on it, and that's my lunch right there.
My wife Tanya will come in. This will be her dinner.
That would be dinner, yeah.
Yes, this will be dinner for her because she likes to have sweet potatoes just like this.
I love it. So delicious.
So I will see why you have to have the aluminum foil.
Yeah.
Is because good cleanup. You can just throw the aluminum foil away because you would have had a lot to put into
scrubbing the pan.
Scrubbing that
pan.
really
do. Yep. So you can use parchment if you have that, but the aluminum foil works quite nicely. And you can see, like we mentioned, so some of the potatoes, there's quite a bit of room in between, and they peel just really, really easily off of here. So what we're going to do is we're going to actually take these and we're going to put them through, this is called a tammy or a drum sieve, and it kind of has the same texture as like a strainer. You can see through it a little bit. So it has that same texture, and this will help keep a little bit of that thickness from the sweet potato itself, so that we're not just, sometimes if you use a blender or something like that, you're going to end up with a puree, something that's really soft. We want something that's kind of thick in this case.
So something to hold kind of the texture.
Exactly, yep, so we definitely want that. So we'll pop a sweet potato down here. We'll just peel back some of the skin there. So we have the sweet potato that's on top of the screen here, and all we're going to do is we're going to take a little plastic bench scraper, and you go through and you push down through this. And this is a technique that we teach students. It works really well, especially if you're doing a lot of product at one time. You end up just kind of pressing it through. It also will take out, sometimes sweet potatoes have the little fibers that are at the edge, so you can pull those out.
So just taking the sweet potato, and it easily pulls off of there and
super
and
easy.
The skin. Can you do 2 at a time, or do you just do
I don't
one?
know. How much do you pay?
So just press it on through. Is
yeah,
that right?
you can absolutely just give it a little shove. And then what you can do is kind of do a sweeping motion with air. Yep, that's it. And go straight through.
Right.
Absolutely. We'll give that other one a press there. And the fun part about this is essentially the filling, right? This is what we're after. This is the sweet potato, and it's a real purity of flavor. If you're going to call it a sweet potato tart, it should taste like sweet potato. That's always been my kind of culinary opinion or philosophy. If you're going to call it something, it better deliver on that. So.
Well, this is pretty easy to do.
It really is, yeah.
I'm not really pressing on there very hard.
And there it is.
So you say you teach this technique to our students?
We do.
Well, this is good.
Yep.
And that's it, right?
That's it. Yeah, and the cool part is when you pick it up, there's nothing underneath. So it all sticks down to the bottom. So we'll go ahead and we'll scrape that and we'll put it back right in here into a bowl.
Okay.
I mean, really, you could, skin the potatoes and you could put them right in a bowl with just the fork too, and then you would have this mixture here.
So you could just mash it with a fork.
You can absolutely mash it with a fork. Yeah.
Okay.
If you don't want to go buy a $50, Tammy to do it, you could absolutely mash it with a fork, and that would look really nice, just like that too. So, and that's what we're going to end up mixing with this too. So, again, these are all things that we'll run through with students in classes. And I know that, if I reflect a little bit back on my college time, I think that, a lot of the little things that I learned in 1998 were really essential, and they kind of have come about. And I struggled initially when I went to school because I didn't have the funds at the time to really get kick-started. And this was, I took a break halfway through school. I just mentally wasn't prepared to kind of handle everything and the adjustments. It was a big move for a small town boy to move to what I thought was a big city, even though it wasn't.
So you were able to find a scholarship, and what type of scholarship, and how did that come about?
I was. So it was one that I had to apply for. I went back to school, and I had someone who became a mentor and a very good friend.
So you had to apply for it. Tell me a little bit about that process that you remember.
Yep, that I remember is the good question. So it was visiting financial aid, and at the time there they had scholarships that were available. They had a web page that scholarships were available on, and I scrolled through and I found one that fit me that was actually also recommended by a teacher as well. And my application process was pretty simple. I submitted an essay along with the initial application for it. And it was $1,000 scholarship for me, which was huge at the time. It was.
So tell me, what did that $1,000 mean towards you when you think? Were you working at the time, or you weren't working?
Yeah, so I was working. I worked two jobs. I was working as a sous chef at a horse racing track, and I would go to that job until about 10 p.m. And then from 10 p.m. until 4 a.m. I would go to another job where I made donuts at Myers in Muskegon. And then I would go to school, and sometimes I got sleep, and sometimes I didn't. But what it meant for me, it was a spark. It was a key to get in the door, is what it was for me. It was like, okay, I can get back to school and I can do this. I had worked my butt off through some other jobs, but it was a way for me to get back at it, and it was pivotal. Right. It really was.
Right. We have many students that, a scholarship of, just $1,000, $500, $100 sometimes makes the difference.
Absolutely.
Between sometimes paying for a book, sometimes being able to afford where they're living, being able to put groceries on the table.
Yeah.
To me, those were our scholarships really go towards. So some people think sometimes that it's just around the tuition, but for many of our students, there's other things that go into life for them to be able to come to school other than just tuition.
Yeah, and it's amazing because you never know someone else's story, right? We all have our own dragons that we battle, and so if you can help somebody along the way, it's a huge.
So what did you just add there?
I'm sorry, as we were talking, I added a little bit of salt.
Okay.
Because sweet potatoes are never complete, in my opinion, without just a touch of salt. And that was kosher salt. You can absolutely use fine salt in here. And then we have some vanilla here, and we're just going to add just a splash.
And so a splash looks like, is that a tablespoon?
We'll say that's a half a teaspoon, of vanilla
okay.
there. Now, here's the important part at this point. We use a lot of recipes, and this is where the recipe went out the window, right? Because basically we have mashed sweet potatoes with salt and vanilla.
Right.
Taste it, right? And so what I would kind of encourage is taste it for the salt factor first, and then the vanilla factor second, because the salt is what ultimately brings out the sweetness of the sweet potato itself. So you go back and you give it a good taste. And this is going to be the filling for our tart shell. And we have that already baked off ahead of time. And so we can go ahead and we'll grab that and we'll.
So
we'll
we
get our
had
filling in,
3 sweet potatoes that we peeled, that
Yep.
we baked and we put in here. Then we also had a little bit of salt.
A little bit of salt.
And about a half a teaspoon of
Half a teaspoon of vanilla. And now your sweet potato is going to vary in size too. So if you find that, hey, this isn't enough sweet potatoes, go grab the sweet potatoes and just kind of, mash up some more to put in there. But that's kind of the nice fluctuation with this piece is, and all of these, if you have extra sweet potato too, it's just delicious microwaved on its own the next day for lunch. So it works pretty simple like that. So we'll go ahead and we'll grab our tart shell and we'll get it filled up.
Right.
Okay, so we have the tart shell that's come out of the oven, and you can see there's a little bit of toasty color on the perimeter, and we can also notice that there's white chocolate on the inside. And so what we've done is while the tart shell was still warm, we painted it with just a little bit of white chocolate. This does a few things. One. If you ever have any areas that get broken on the tart shell, you can actually reassemble and kind of acts like glue. You can set those up together. You just pop it in your refrigerator afterwards. 2, it's also going to prevent any of the moisture that's still left in the sweet potatoes from sogging out the crust. And then 3, it will, if you remember, we didn't have a lot of sweetness added to this, so this just real thin layer will actually add a touch of sweetness to this as well.
So tell me a little bit about the white chocolate. What did you have to do in order to be able to spread it?
Right. So we put it into a not metal bowl. That's another thing you have to teach students too. So not metal bowl and then into the microwave, because if you put a metal bowl in the microwave, it makes a little fire. So plastic bowl in the microwave. And when you melt chocolate in the microwave, you got to be careful, especially white chocolate. You want to go 30 seconds to start and then give it a stir, and then about 15-second increments after that and give it a stir. Otherwise, it will burn. And if anybody's ever popped white chocolate in the microwave for 2 minutes, you know that it comes out not looking like white chocolate.
So 30 seconds in the microwave, stir, and then use a brush or a spoon to spur it in
I used a brush to kind of brush it on. I would recommend a brush over a spoon, otherwise a spoon will leave it a little bit too thick and it ends up kind of being clumpy. But from there, it's really pretty simple. We have the sweet potato filling that we made, and we're just going to go ahead and fill up the tart shell itself. It's always surprising, even after all these years, how much filling this will actually take. Now, what we're thinking about is we still have a chocolate layer that's going to have to go on top. So we don't want to fill this all the way to the top. So error on the low side, and we're looking to fill it about 3/4 of the way up ultimately, so that we have just a little bit of room for the dark chocolate ganache that's in there. I use an offset spatula. You could use a rubber spatula, and we're just going to go ahead and start spreading this out just a little bit. And I like to work from one place. The tart's circular, so we can turn it. That's a good thing.
Right. And so I see you keep on turning it using the spatula with another hand, just keep on going all the way around.
Exactly. And when we hold, this is something we teach, in class too. When we hold the spatula, it's a lot like holding a knife. You don't hold a spatula from back here. That would be like holding a pencil by the eraser and trying to write, right?
Okay.
So the same kind of thing. So we choke up a little bit, and I put my index finger right on the top of the blade, and then 3 fingers underneath, and you hold. You have a lot more force and a lot more confidence, a lot more direction with that too.
Well, Corey, you were sharing around your scholarship that you had received. And there's always folks behind that scholarship that have given their talent and given their resources to make that happen.
Yeah.
And that's one of the reasons why we're here today, to really, raise scholarship dollars.
Yep.
Tell me a little bit about when you think about that, what do you think around folks who are able to donate their resources and their talents and to scholarships for students?
I think, for me, it's kind of if you can donate, you should donate. Even for me, I donate now because it affected my life, and it may sound, a little strange, but yes, teachers actually donate to scholarship funds for their own school, and I think that's a huge driving point. I think as a student, you don't know who made the donations or anything along those lines, but you never know what your initial donation is going to have a lasting effect on the future, right? So I can say that scholarship that I got may not have been a huge donation from the folks that gave at that time, but for me, that's what kickstarted my career. That's what got me back. That's what got me confident. And so, that's a huge thank you to whoever it was. I have no idea.
So someone invested in you through that scholarship, and you were able to go on and finish up culinary school.
Yep.
And when you got finished with culinary school, what happened based upon that investment?
My goodness, my career started. You know, I went and worked in fine dining restaurants for the next 12 years, and then ultimately came back to teaching way down the road. And so, you know, that initial investment, like I said, was that spark that started the career. So you might not know it, but yes, you're affecting someone's life, but you could also be affecting someone's life who's going to affect many others. You know, if somebody could be a teacher, somebody could be, a community leader. Someone could have large effects on those around them too, and you have no idea.
So that scholarship investment of $1,000 into your life made a major impact where you were able to go on, finish school, start working, start cooking wonderful meals for other people.
Yep.
So you not only invested in you, but you were able to produce some things out of that life. And now kind of bring it all the way forward. You're teaching, you're a full-time faculty member, you're now investing in other students' lives.
Yep.
And you're making a contribution now to, you know, society in the sense that you're impacting positively on other people's lives.
Yeah, and I think those are the lasting impacts that you never see, right? So as a teacher, and just like you would be as a scholarship donor, there could be a student who will have a lasting impact, 50 years into the future that we don't know. Right. And so it's those bits and pieces that you put in now that you see come out so huge in the end. And that's the wonderful part about it.
Right. And we have the opportunity here at Kalamazoo Valley Community College. We serve a range of ages of students, and you have that range of age of students in our classroom. So when we're thinking around giving scholarships, we're thinking around, yes, those folks that come at 18, but we also have students with us who are 50, 45, who are 30, who are on this upper end of over 50. Yeah. So what does that impact when you see students in your classroom who are, really kind of established, mature adults?
Yeah, you gave a perfect snapshot of my confections class. We have high school graduates, we have a pregnant mother, we have fathers in the class, we have a whole array of backgrounds, and so you give, when the students earn a scholarship, a non-traditional student or an older student earns a scholarship later on in their life, it brings them back in the classroom, but it also affects the entire dynamics of the entire classroom at large, because now we have a diversity in the classroom that we normally don't see in universities, right? You see a lot of high school graduates, but in community colleges, you see that diversity. You see students actually getting to experience the real world just in this microcosm of our baking lab, which is, it's huge, right. It's life. We talked about passion, right? And one thing we didn't talk about is that curiosity. And so you're feeding all these different curiosities, and you see, students make relationships in the classroom who may have never even met before, who wouldn't likely be friends otherwise outside, and it's different relationships that are developed because of that. It's pretty inspiring.
Good. So what are we doing next?
So next step, we have the sweet potatoes that are in here. We are going to cap this off with a chocolate ganache. We're going to go ahead and make that next. So we'll let this just set. This can set at room temperature, or you can pop it in your cooler if you'd like, and then we can go ahead and we'll make our chocolate ganache next. I think sweet potatoes for the chef provide a great opportunity for flavor development. And like life, the more things you kind of go through, the more character that you develop. And I think sweet potatoes are no different, right? Pop them in an oven at a high temperature and let them just kind of do their thing for, a good period of time. And eventually all the sugars inside of the sweet potatoes caramelize. They really bring out that roasted, delicious flavor. It's one of the reasons why I absolutely love sweet potato from this dish.
The importance to me of giving back has started with my mom. She used to dress up as Santa Claus, and we'd go into the state hospital and would just make these people's lives change as we passed out Christmas gifts and just sat with them and gave them time and acknowledged them as humans. I think it takes a community of people and giving to each other to be able to combat a lot of systemic issues that we're working with. I'm Michelle Bustamante, and I'm a nursing student at Kalamazoo Valley Community College. I graduated high school in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and initially came out here to go to Kalamazoo College, but ultimately I just didn't have the right support system that I needed. That kind of led me to working here in Kalamazoo, getting grounded here in this community, and looking up Kalamazoo Valley Community College for a lot of different reasons. It was just a better match for me, from mitigating social pressure and just certain different things that really led me to success. I'm not a traditional student, and so now it was like, all right, you got to handle this. Like, you really got to know what you're doing. And I started looking at the resources that Valley has to offer, and this last semester really came through for me. Growing up, it's kind of been rooted in me, like giving back and donating time and working with others that are in need, but also I have just been gifted so much from other people to get to the point where I am that I want to be able to pay that forward. So I think it's particularly important to keep scholarships and money in our community and donate to local scholarships, because I see it personally in the hospital. There's so many Kalamazoo Valley grads working in the hospital that are having exponential impact on so many people's lives. So I think if that money were to go elsewhere, you wouldn't see it in either a direct or indirect way. So donations, small or large, can have a profound impact. Receiving the scholarship from me helped me in a plethora of ways. I think primarily from an emotional standpoint, just being uplifted and empowered and being able to direct my attention from more of the finances and basic needs to more of like an emotional self-esteem standpoint, I think really set me up for success. If I could talk to the person that donated money to my success and my scholarship, I think it probably would come out either as words that are really awkward and trying to be grateful, or just as tears. I don't know if I could convey how grateful I am. To everyone that has donated scholarships to students like me, I just want to say thank you so much. Your impact has been so profound in my life, and guaranteed has impacted the lives of others exponentially.
So now we're back, and we've prepared the tart, and we're going to be making the chocolate ganache.
Yep, the chocolate ganache for the topping of it. And I'm going to get the cream kind of started and warmed up. And so we're going to jump into this. And the ganache is really, it's nothing more than a mixture of chocolate and cream in its most bare bone form. And we teach this actually in the class too. And so what we started off with was a little bit of dark chocolate here. And we've melted some of the dark chocolate ahead of time so that we have the dark chocolate, ready to go.
And how did you melt the dark chocolate? Was this in the microwave?
We did it in the microwave, yep,
Okay.
and then we just placed it in the metal bowl after it melted.
So very similar process to what we did with the white chocolate.
Exactly, yep. So that 30 seconds in. And so our creams come up to a boil here. We have the induction burner, so they work super fast. We're gonna go ahead and we'll shut that off, and then we'll just set the cream aside. So Dr. Washington, if you want to whisk this together, and if you'll notice we're using a fine wired whisk, and we're going to add about 1/3 of our cream initially here. We're going to let that come together. Just gently.
So we're just gently whisking this in.
And you'll notice some of the particles around the edges, so that the cream isn't fully emulsified yet. But as we add, we'll add the next third or so, the cream will become emulsified. While you're doing that, I have a little bit of honey here. This is actually honey that we had from the Food Innovation Center. So from some
This
of the
is
plants.
smelling wonderful.
Yeah, it's
oh
really
my goodness.
delicious. And the honey does a couple of things. One, it's going to obviously add a little sweetness, It's going to add a little flavor, but the honey itself actually acts as an invert sugar, so it creates a smoother texture for the ganache. That looks beautiful. And we'll add in our last third here.
So the recommendation is that we don't add everything all at one time,
Correct.
meaning the cream. So we should add it like 3 parts.
Yes, and I'm kind of smirking because in class we talk about this as anytime you create an emulsion, it's like a negotiation between 2 ingredients that don't really like each other. So if you can introduce that slowly, you end up with something that works out really well. And you can see the texture on this is just really
this is wonderful.
quite lovely. So I'm going to add in some of our butter now, and if you just want to keep on stirring, the butter will take a little bit of time to just melt down and get broken in.
Because this is still warm based upon the cream being warm.
Exactly. And we have the chocolate melted already at 90. And butter needs to be about 90 degrees. Most dairy fats need to be about 90 degrees to get melted. So the butter does a couple of things. One, it's going to give a little bit of shine to the ganache, but I mean, it's butter, so it's going to make it delicious. And it kind of gives that luxurious, really smooth on the palate texture as well.
One of the things that's really impactful for me is that we do have many people around our community that give to the foundation. And it makes an impact on our students. And partly it's donors every day.
Yeah.
Donors from corporations, from businesses, from nonprofits. It also is from folks like yourself, faculty, who give. Those folks that think sometimes, well, my small amount won't matter. And I would tell you, based upon what we know, every little bit does matter, from the big dollars that come in, from also to the 10, 20, $100. You know, we're very fortunate to have that type of caliber of individuals that give, and it makes it wonderful.
Yeah, we really are fortunate for that.
So, what happens next?
Well, you can eat it all at this point. It's really good. So I guess let's take a second and just talk about ganache, and I won't spend too much time on it. This is kind of like a staple in the bakery, right? If you add some hot milk to this, bang, you have some hot chocolate. You can cool this down and use it as a frosting. This can go into buttercreams to add as flavoring. Here we're going to use it to top off our tart. And we had the sweet potato tart that we had filled already earlier. You can see we left a little bit, was there about 1/4 of an inch there or so on the top, and we're going to go ahead and fill that in with some of the ganache. Now, use your best judgment at home. This is one of the reasons why I talk about what you can use for this, because if you have leftover, you can use it for something else. Okay. That's fine. Okay, so at this point, we're going to go ahead and we're going to top off the tart with some of our ganache. And we kind of transfer over to a rubber spatula. It works a whole lot easier for scraping. And we're just going to top this off.
Wow, look at that.
It's pretty nice. It doesn't really need a lot of description. I mean, it's going in kind of fluid. One thing I'd recommend is don't overfill at this point.
Okay. And so you just have to eyeball this.
Let's set that right over there. Yeah, so you just kind of pay attention to where it's at. And then at this stage, you can give it a little bit of a shimmy. And you'll notice it just wants to fall right into place.
Mm-hmm. And so no kind of other technique than really using your hands and kind of shaking. Really,
that's it. And you can, so we can do a little fun stylistic move, but you can use a small offset spatula and then just go back. I don't know what this is called. I just like it. So we're going to give a little bit of texture. I used to call it the Better Homes and Garden move, because if you ever look at the cakes on the outside, they always have like this really dynamic, swooshy kind of texture. Yes. And if you just take your spatula and you do the same thing, it leaves that kind of dynamic texture. Now, it's up to you if you like the flat aesthetic or if you want a little bit of wave. And that's it. So really simple. You got 2 options at this point. If you're going to serve it today, you can leave it at room temperature and let it set up or crystallize, as we call it in the classroom, for probably 2 hours. And then at that point, you can go back and cut it, or you can pop it in the fridge. Just know that the texture of the ganache is going to change in the refrigerator. It's going to come more firm. So here we are. We have we have the finalized tart, and we're going to add some garnishes to it. And the fun part with the garnishes, these were actually garnishes that were made by some of the students here in our advanced confections class. So.
And these are absolutely beautiful garnishes.
Yeah, they came out, they did a really fantastic job. So it starts as the chips, just kind of like we had for the ganache. It's really the same chocolate for that, but obviously there's no cream added to this. And so we go through the tempering process, and we can show that a little bit later.
So how do you get these unique shapes?
Well, we also sell magic here. No, we use a lot of, we use acetate, which is like a thin piece of plastic. And what we'll do is the chocolate goes into temper, and it becomes like a thicker kind of paste, if you will, so it's not super fluid. And at that point, you can bend it, you can flex it, you can actually give it some life. The thing is everything has to be a little bit premeditated, because once that chocolate starts to set up, it doesn't care what you think. Like, it's just going to go that way.
So this is why we're turning out superstars every day and not just home cooks.
This is the difference, right? So you have the delicious pie, and then you start adding these things, and that's when you add all those extra elements, and that's really what kind of brings it all back around. That's the fun part of it. So we're gonna wrap this up, the tart here. I have a little bit of powdered sugar because I think it's really beautiful. The contrast of the stark white on top of the ganache looks really good. If you ever do this at home, don't hit it, right? So you just use a couple of fingers, and if you just tap it just gently.
Oh, that's the trick.
Yes, otherwise it's like Frosty the Snowman, just kind of everywhere. So we'll just give this a little bit of an outside touch.
And so is this why you won that championship on Food Network?
It's definitely why I didn't lose.
Okay.
I think that was kind of that trick, right? So pastry, it can be a pretty gentle craft or skill for sure. We're just going to place a couple of these little garnishes on top. And anytime I do garnishes, I like to add a lot of central height and with a lot of negative space. You know, visually it's kind of heavy. This is where the passion part comes in. Okay. This is where the pride part stops and the passion part comes in. So this is, you look at it, it's a little bit visually heavy, but if we're adding some pieces that actually have some curvature and some dimension to it, then we can add, just a little bit of volume. Like many things in our life, the visuals are what set our expectations, and food is no different. The finished tart should be an interplay of textures. You have the crumbly, sandy texture of the crust, the custardy texture of the sweet potato, the firm texture of the ganache, even the crispy textures of the chocolate garnishes. So with all these interplays of textures, you also have a delicious, robust flavor to bolster that experience. It's really the flavor of the time and the effort that was put into making it that makes it special.
When I started at Kvcc, I was really nervous about college.
I'd never been to college before and didn't really know as a young person that I would be able to succeed at college.
I was born in Caracas, Venezuela, and during my year of high school, I had the chance to get to know about Kalamazoo Valley through different events that the college had for high school students.
When I graduated from high school, I tried to go to a four-year college. Took a job, and that went well until the market didn't start going well anymore, and I lost my job along with hundreds of other people here in Kalamazoo.
I didn't know how I was going to make this possible. When I considered KVCC, at that time, my wife had passed away just a few years before that, so I was a widower and had recently lost my vision to glaucoma. So I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew it was important for me to do something. I knew I wanted more out of life.
Kalamazoo Valley provides a great value for our students, but there's still a tremendous need to give.
We recognize the impact that we can have on the lives of our students.
We give because we understand the struggles.
There's a lot of places that we can give money in our community, but we really feel that the money that we contribute to the KVCC Foundation goes a long way with helping students at a tremendous level and giving back to our community.
I think education is the foundation to being successful in life.
The impact on a student's life can be significant. Our scholarship dollars go a long way in helping students achieve their goals.
Receiving the scholarship meant the world to me. It was so comforting to know that somebody really wanted me to succeed.
Going through college with a child with special needs was extra challenging for me.
It can be a challenge going to college full-time and raising a family and trying to balance all of that, because balance sometimes is elusive in life.
One scholarship can mean a life change.
Receiving the scholarship helped me to be able to continue with my education and continue to take care of my son at the same time.
I don't know who my donor is or who that individual or individuals are, but I would like to say thank you to them.
If I could say thank you to my donor, I would beyond, I don't even know what the words to say.
If I could say thank you to my scholarship donor.
If I could say thank you to the person, to the donor who made my scholarship possible,
I would say
thank you. Those are the only words I have.
Thank you. Thank you.
how did you know how much this means to me?
I'm amazed that anybody would be willing to give dollars to somebody that they didn't know.
Thank you for the opportunity of giving me this scholarship. It's more than just an education. You've given a man who cannot see, a man who's blind. You've given him vision. You've given me hope. Thank you.
Well, Corey, we spent today kind of with this sweet potato chocolate tart, getting to know you a little bit better, you sharing your story and your journey, and especially our students' journey here at Kalamazoo Valley Community College. And want to certainly thank you for you being able to contribute not only your time and your talent, but you also contribute your dollars to the foundation. And we want to thank those who have joined us today as well with this particular opportunity to share our story regarding our students. And want to invite you to be a part of this, to engage with us. You certainly have the opportunity to give and make the impact on our students every single day. So I would invite you to certainly lean in and join us in our mission to make that impact on our students and their lives, so that you can be a part of this journey with us. I think we're ready maybe to take a bite.
I've been ready for a while. Absolutely.
Good.
Let's do it.
Well, it's just cutting perfectly.
Yeah, it looks really great.
I think that's really nice. Look, I wish, let's see, folks,
Yeah.
look at that.
Well, there you are. Cheers.
All right.
Hello, I'm Michelle Eldridge, Vice Chairperson for the Kvcc Foundation. Hearing from some of our student scholarship recipients certainly gives meaning as to why we're here today. The students you just heard from represent so many others with similar stories. Of those that apply for financial assistance, only 41% receive help. What happens to the other 59%? Do they delay their education, fall further behind academically or into debt, or drop out altogether? All of these scenarios are possible.
I'm Matt Zepka, and it's my honor to be speaking with you today. Most students at Kalamazoo Valley juggle the demands of family life, classes, and a job all at the same time. That's why scholarship can make such a difference in their life. And all these students are extremely grateful for your support. In the coming school year, the Kvcc Foundation will provide $500,000 in scholarships to students. But as Michelle indicated, that will only cover 41% of students in need. So we need your help.
With a gift of $1,000, you can help a student pay for most of their semester tuition. With a $500 gift, you can help a student pay for textbooks for a semester. Gifts of several $100s can make the difference between taking an additional class or delaying an education yet again, or perhaps never finishing at all. Gifts of any size are so appreciated. We're grateful for whatever you can do to make the dream of a college education a reality for students with financial need. I'm Stacy Firschweiler, and together with all the members of the Kvcc Foundation Board of Directors, I ask you to help make a difference in the life of a student. Please go to our website and make your gift to invest in the future of a student, invest in the next generation, and invest in our community.
our virtual scholarship fundraising cooking show is coming to an end. Thank you to our celebrity chefs and our students whose stories have inspired us all. On behalf of the KVCC Foundation, I would like to thank all of our sponsors. Their generous support makes all this possible. I hope you will share the need for scholarships with all of your friends. There is still time to give, and there is still time to make a difference in the lives of our students. Thank you.